Hello, everybody. This is Joe Lewis Walker, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Don't change that dial.
I guess your initial introduction to the blues, I believe, was pretty much in your household growing up.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was my father. When I was a little kid, 6, 7 years old, he'd come home and play records for me. He'd sit me on the table. I was a little kid, and he'd eat his dinner after work. He'd put on some of his, favorite guys he had seen play in Mississippi and stuff like that.
So, do you think had that influence not been there, do you think you still would have been drawn to the blues eventually anyway?
Well, I know I would have been drawn to music.
Yeah.
When my father was playing me all these records and my mother was playing me all these records, it just happened to be blues, because that's the music where they came from. My father's from Mississippi, my mother's from Arkansas, but my older brothers and sisters, who were all older than me, 5 of us, I was the youngest. My oldest sister would be playing Little Richard and a Fast Domino, in the mid 50s and in the late 50s, and my other sister would be playing Elvis Presley and different styles of music. My other sister would be playing something else. Then later on, my brother would be playing Motown. So I got a little taste of it all. But what my father did was, he would sit me on the table. I was a little kid, and I like to eat out of his bowl. Eating out of your dad's bowl and stuff, and he'd play the music. And it was like Pavlov's dog. If I was a good kid, he'd play the music. He'd let me listen to it. If I wasn't, he wouldn't let me listen to it because he never spanked me or whooped me or anything like that. Yeah. So that was his way of sort of, it was pretty smart actually. Pretty smart.
Sounds like a wonderful musical education.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Do you remember your first guitar?
I do remember it, but it didn't have a name. It was an off-brand guitar. About 1960. The first electric guitar about 1961. It was just like a Les Paul copy, but it didn't really have a name. It was from China or somewhere, and it looked like a Formica table or something on the top. It really didn't have a finish. But I had to convert it after about a year and a half to like 4-string, sort of be a bass, because I ended up playing with my cousins when I moved from one district in San Francisco. I moved from the Ocean View district to the Fillmore district in San Francisco. And when I moved to the Fillmore district with my mom and 4 of my cousins had a band, and so I started hanging out with my cousins, and one thing led to another, and we were pretty good, playing around, doing little commercials on advertisements on the TV and the radio and stuff like that, and playing at sock hops dances and skating rinks and stuff like that. And then we became a little bit better, and we were playing for motorcycle clubs and things. So but that guitar lasted me a long time.
Mm. Talking about those early days in San Francisco as a young lad playing, were you an ambitious young fella in those days?
Well, yeah, especially when you're in a little band with your cousins, you know what I'm saying? Mm. So what we would do, we had our own little set, and we would back a lot of other musicians, older musicians who could get us really, nicer gigs. So in that context, we had to learn a little bit more diverse material. We had to learn dance songs and songs that were popular today, and then we had to, of course, play the blues, which we could all do. We could play the blues, and so it was for young guys, 13, 14. We all joined the union when we were 14. We all joined together. So we were pretty good. We joined the union.
I guess in those early days there in San Francisco, it would have been prior to the hippie culture coming into the area. When that came in, how did that change things for you?
Well, I used to go to junior high school at a school called Benjamin Franklin, which was about a block from the Fillmore Auditorium. So when they let us have our high school dances at the Fillmore Auditorium. I got to see Little Richard there and James Brown when he had a brand new bag, and the Temptations, the Real Temptations, and all kind of stuff there. But they let us have our battle, so we were real familiar with the Film Auditorium,
Yeah.
But as it was then, it was predominantly our district was the Fillmore district was predominantly African American and Japanese, and if you went up quite a few other blocks, it was Jewish, and everybody was mixed together in a way. So we were used to being, it wasn't a different thing. The only thing different was that the young people now had long hair, and you saw a gay couple, or you saw an interracial couple, or you saw kids from Chicago, all the musicians from Chicago, the blues guys from Chicago coming out, the white ones and the black ones, moving out to California. And you had all the cats from New York moving out because the weather is nice in California. It's only two kind of weathers in the West Coast. That's wet and dry. There's no, ain't no winter. There's no snow in San Francisco. So you had all that, and you had people creating their own music too. Then, I won't even call it psychedelic. Guys were just learning how to play music, And all the psychedelic bands I know, from Bobby Weir to Dead and them and Yorm and all those guys, they were all pretty much blues bands. I mean, they were blues based. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was, and then the Fillmore would when it changed hands from Charles Sullivan to the Mime Troupe, and then from the Mime Troupe to Bill Graham. Bill Graham made sure to have all kinds of music represented at one show. So if you went and seen the Jefferson Airplane with Yorma and Jack and Cassidy and Marty Bell and everybody, you on that same show you might see the James Cotton Blues Band and Rashawn Roland Kirk Jazz Band, or you'd see, and it'd be four days in a row. Except on the Sunday, it would be in an afternoon, and that would usually be the blues guys doing a matinee by themselves.
Uh-huh.
So that was a really good thing, and plus we already had our own scene there. Before the hippies came in there, I lived in the same neighborhood with Freddie Stewart and Sylvester Stewart, Sly Stone, and them, and I knew all the guys in Tower of Power and from another area, and I knew Carlos Santana and his brother Jorge, who just died, rest his soul, and we all knew each other. Everybody knew each other, and so it was, it was really a good time, and it was really across pollination. A lot of people don't know. They think Sly Stone's just a funk band. Well, Sly Stone produced a lot of hippie records for a label called Autumn Label, which was a guy named Tom Donahue who ran a radio station. And I won't get in too far into the weeds, but and Sly Stone produced hits for a lot of people. He produced Laugh, Laugh for the Bull Brummels. He produced Cry Just a Little for the Bull Brummels, which were hit records,
Yeah.
And so everything was really cross-pollinated. Everybody was playing with everybody. That's why when Sly came out with his band, it was a quintessential San Francisco band. They could play funk, they could play psychedelic, they could play rock. They had women, they had Jerry Martini Italian, they had black, they had Gregorico's Italian. It was just and that's what it was. And they were just the best at what they did. And all the other guys were. It was very telling. That it was pretty cool that way for the most part.
I believe the late and great Michael Bloomfield was a good friend of yours and something of a mentor. Tell us about Mike and the influence that he had on you both as a friend and as a musical mentor.
Well, Michael was really cool with a lot of people. Gave a lot of people breaks. He was sort of the connection with older guys, the real older guys, the guys, the Muddy Waters, and them. They all knew about Michael Bloomfield from Chicago because Michael was one of the first, guys going over to the South Side, West Side that didn't live over there. You know what I mean? So they and plus they knew Michael. His art was always good. And so when the guys like Kerry Bell or James Cotton's band or Otis Rush would come to play at the Matrix, which was a club on Fillmore Street, or one of the smaller clubs, and then maybe play the Fillmore or the Winterland, they could stay at Michael's house.
Hmm.
And so I ended up staying at Michael's house through a friend, and we became good friends, and we knowed each other for long. I got to know him, and he sort of, helped me out. He sent me to Chicago to play with Otis Rush. He got me a little gig for about a minute with Charlie Musselwhite. But he was really inspirational to me. To see Michael Bloomfield play live was. I mean, certain shows you remember the first time you've seen everybody. I remember the first time I seen Michael play with Paul Butterfield, because most of the San Francisco guitar players were there, and nobody's seen anybody play like that. It's basically like this: from the first note, the downbeat of the first note, to the last note of the downbeat of the last note. He played full out. There was, I mean, full out. There was no, and he drove a car like that. He could not drive. He drove with his foot on the pedal all the way. So whenever I rode with Michael, I drove. Because he didn't know any other. He's a great conversationalist. He could play country western. He could play stride piano. He could finger pick like Leo Kottke. I mean, it wasn't too much Michael couldn't do musically. He wasn't a great singer, but piano, slide guitar, lap steel. He taught me how to play lap steel. He taught me how to play piano, and he taught me tunings. Different tunings, But he couldn't teach me how to finger pick, because that was just a little something I didn't have the patience for it. I could do it a little bit now, but not like he could. I mean, he could really. I'm talking about really. Him and Jerry Garcia, they could really finger pick.
Yeah.
People don't know that, but they'd finger pick together, boy, and you'd be like, holy moly. It's like 6 guitar players. I mean, it's a real art.
Now, you spent many years in a gospel group, the Spiritual Corinthians. How do you look back on that period now in your life and career?
Well, it was great for me, because I needed to make a change from what I was doing. It was just, I ran into a brick wall, and things were getting excessive and stuff, and, I ain't fixing me line. And I needed a change. And, I went, I tell everybody, one of my best friends who was a great singer, and he's passed now, his name's Donnie Boone. Me and him used to go out on the weekends and sit in with different people and stuff like that, because I worked with him. We would build houses, fix the inside of houses and stuff. So I worked with him, and so he was a great singer, just dynamic. And so he said, Joe, why don't you come on a Saturday night? We're rehearsing. My gospel group, and the bass player can't make it. Can you come and just hold down the bass for us? Just a rehearsal. And I went to I did it, and then I learned what they were doing, and just on the break, I was just playing guitar, me and Boone together, because we played pretty good. We could complement each other's guitar. And the guys in the group said, "Oh man, no, you can't play bass. You got to play guitar." So we went and got another guy named Gary Walker, a distant cousin. He played bass, and I went to help him out for one show, and I ended up staying 10 years, because I love playing gospel music, and the emotion that goes with it. It's not doing a paid gig, for $15,000. It's once that you. Once in a while, you catch a feeling where 500 people in the same room feeling the same thing at the same time, and it's a feeling, and you don't want to let it go, and you let one guy starts testifying, singing, and then he gets tired, and the music's still going. Another guy grabs the microphone, he starts singing, and and you just let out everything that's inside you. If your mother left you and died, and you didn't get the chance to say goodbye, you start saying, "Oh, my mother left me. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye." And everybody, yeah. And then it gets emotional. It just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And by the time you're through, you just drench, and you feel like you'd have connected with your mother. But everybody else in there who had the same problem or the same issue, they connected with theirs too. And money can't buy that. It's a different thing,
sure.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Do you see that time now as a significant step in the direction towards the music that you're making now? Do you think you'd still be in the same place musically now without those gospel years?
Well, I would be playing what I play now, but I think with the lessons that I learned from gospel is number one, the music. It's really, 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 when you go into a gospel group, people say, "What is it like being in a gospel group? What's the difference with a gospel group and a pop group?" And with a gospel group, it's like a YMCA. You know, young men they teach. It's a young man's training ground to sing. You learn how to sing. You learn your range. You get you learn a 5-part harmony. You learn to stay on your note. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You learn that it's like five fingers on one hand. You know, and so you got to move like 5 fingers on one hand, and you get to a point where it's telepathic with with the other guys in the group, where y'all can switch notes. You know, and it's and the main thing I think about it is the encouragement and the nourishment you get. People see you when you first start, and people come up to you after you've been doing it for 6, 7 years, and they say, "Oh my God, I just every time you sang that particular song, I remember the first night you sang. I remember the night you sang it in the program in 1979, and here it is, 1984. You know, but they remember that. You know, and you say, well, I'm trying. You always say, well, I'm trying. You know, and people say, oh, honey, well, you keep trying. You know what I mean? You get some serious encouragement that you don't normally get. And a gospel group is about as tight as individuals can be. You do so much together before you go and perform, or before you do your music. Y'all prepare together. You know, it's a different thing.
So was there a specific moment when you felt the time was right now to take that step forward and launch yourself as a solo artist?
No, I'd been a solo artist before I was in the gospel group. I'd made records when I lived with Bloomfield. They just nothing happened with them. There's a couple of records that I played on, but mostly sessions. But I think the gospel group, what the gospel experience did, was to prepare me to be able to deal with more of the side of the music that is not on the treadmill, not so much. Don't worry about what somebody else doing. Don't worry about if you're selling 1 million records. Don't worry about that. Just try to connect with people. Always try to connect when you get on the stage, you know, or when you get in a program, or when you get in the auditorium. And I think if you do that, everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it gives you confidence too, because you know if you get to a certain part of you can tap into certain verses, certain harmonies, certain lyrics that will take you emotionally to a place where you were. You know, and when you hit that emotion, you hear great singers like Ray Charles or somebody or anybody, and you just hear somebody say, "Well, they're in a zone." You know, you get in a zone, and it's like you're not thinking about anything else.
So with the blues is a style of music that, well, basically it transcends generations. There are lots of styles come and go, but the blues is always there. What do you think it is about the blues that has that everlasting effect?
Well, I mean, the blues, it's what somebody said. It's one of the most easiest things. It sounds like it's the easiest thing to play, but it's the hardest thing to play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's so misleading that it's simple. There isn't a lot of movement like classical music. There isn't a lot of theory like jazz. You know, it's not a lot of smoke and mirrors like pop music. It's basically, you know, they say rock and roll is 3 chords and the truth. Well, if that's true, then the blues is 3 chords and the 10 Commandments. You know, because it's nothing more harder than to play a slow blues without it getting boring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know how you do that?
How's that?
You tell a story.
Uh-huh.
It's got to be a story. It's got to be a conversation. It's got to be a beginning, and it's got to be a middle, and it's got to be an end. and there has to be in a perfect world. It can be happy, it can be sad, it can be major, it can be minor, chordal. But I find for me, the most effective blues is cathartic. It's you are trying to get somewhere, and in a perfect world, you're doing all the right things to get there, or you have some sort of tribulation. Same with gospel music. You have some sort of tribulation that is, it may seem fair, it may not be fair, but you're gonna do the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna let nothing stop you. You may be bent, but you're not broken. This here type of thing, and and it's cathartic, and it's basically that's the human condition. That's what Shakespeare talks about. That's what life's about, and the blues never falls out of fashion because it's real life experience. You can take the blues and apply it to what's going on at any time in life.
Yeah.
But it applies better when there is a tribulation and then you have some sort of event, a cathartic thing to where you can see your way through to the other side.
Mm-hmm. So, being a style of music that does travel through generations, have you come across any younger blues musicians that you see a little bit of your younger self in? Any that remind you of yourself back in the day?
Well, I see. I'm fortunate. Like I said, living in San Francisco, and I got a good taste of the blues, the old school blues, the new school blues. Just like I used to see Howlin' Wolf. I used to go see the Yardbirds at the Film Auditorium doing Howlin' Wolf.
Yeah.
I used to go see Eric and the Animals, doing John Lee Hooker, and then I'd go play with John Lee Hooker. So I got it. I got it all. And so in that context, I'm sort of a child of B.B. King, who I played with, Mike Bloomfield, who I played with, Buddy Guy, Willie Dixon. I'm a child of all those people,
yeah.
And I'm a child, I'm a product of all the stuff in the '60s and what I infused. So when I hear people like Gary Clark Jr. or Chris Stone, but more like people like Gary Clark Jr. who is versatile and plays blues and can sing like Prince, and that I like, because when I came back to playing blues in the '80s, wasn't a lot of guys doing that except for my friend Robert Cray. They wanted you to play 3 chords in the blues, and we none of us did that. And now when I hear guys like Gary Clark Jr. or Jerika Singleton or guys like that, or Chris Stone, Kingfish, who can fly with the best of them on guitar, I mean, I'm glad, because I feel like certain guys like BB, who did blues, but also BB did other things, like with U2 and things like that. And I always liked that about BB, and he'd always told me, Joe, do that. Keep your music inclusive. Don't make it exclusive. When I did that, and Robert did that, and Stevie Ray did that, we all knew each other, and everybody liked it, although they were way more successful than me. But I'm still here, and I'm the oldest of them. So, but when I see young guys like Gary Clark Jr. and guys like that, and Doyle Bramhall, Baby Doyle Bramhall II, and those guys, because they can play everything, and they play with emotion and feeling. They sing with emotion and feeling, and now as they get older, they're sort of growing into that thing. I mean, with Baby Doyle playing with Clapton, and Gary, of course, playing with Keith and them and Mick and them, and then playing all. It's just good to see. I love it.
Yeah. Look, it's always been a standout feature of your music that you've never been afraid to push the boundaries of the blues and mix it up with other musical influences. So obviously that's been a very important thing to you.
Yeah, well, if anything, it can't stay static. It's got to move. It just cannot. That if it would stay static, Muddy Waters would have stayed playing an acoustic guitar.
Exactly.
He didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's got to move, but you can't lose the essence of it. I don't think. The feeling and the storytelling of it.
Now, as we speak, we're just a few days away from the official release date of your brand new album. How are you feeling about it, considering the state of things with the pandemic, that you're not able to get out there and play and promote the album as you would normally?
Well, it's a strange feeling, you know. It's what's the world right now is where it's never been before, and all of us experiencing the same things at the same time is very unusual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all so now we not only have a pandemic, we have a financial crisis, and we also have equality problems in the world that are coming to the forefront. And I think that one may get fixed, but if the other ones aren't fixed, I don't think people are going to go back to income equality. To me, it's something I've seen about one person having $1 billion and 200 million people being dirt poor. I think that the world is just a little bit tired of that type of. Nobody works to get $200 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is nobody in this world that has worked to get $200 million.
Yeah.
If you got $200 million, somebody worked for you. And so people are finding out that, you know, the world can't exist without people who really work. And if you're going to really work, you really deserve a living wage. You really deserve to not have to worry about your children getting education or health care or anything like that. All this stuff's tied together now. You know, it's the perfect storm. And I think that things are going to change around the world. You know, people are going to start treating people with respect, or either people are not going to work for them. You know, and so I think things are going to change. Just the way they changed with women's rights when women couldn't vote, just the way they changed with some other rights. I think since people are stuck in not being able to go out, they have time now to really look and see what kind of world we're living in. And everybody's affected. You know, when you have 40 million people who are working, like all my musician friends, all of them, from Waddy Wachtel to David Crosby to Bobby Rush to Keith Richards, ain't none of us working. And, you know, to have brought so much enjoyment to the world, and everybody stopped and told that when things do open up, you guys are the last ones that are going to open up. We don't even know how you're going to start playing again. There's none of us feeling secure. So we all have time to reflect on what this world really is and what is really important. And we are our brother's keeper. Whether you think we are or not, we are. So we have to start keeping better for our brothers and sisters. Because when one of us are out, if one person, if there's a group of people starving for no reason at all, or if there's a group of people burning up the Amazon, and we all know that we need the Amazon to survive, then we as a people have to say, hey, stop burning up the Amazon, idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Black, white, green, yellow, brown doesn't make any freaking difference. Without that, we can't survive. Well, who wants to go back to smog in the air? I don't.
Nope.
You know, so why can't we have like this? If you got a car and you have a license plate and you have a number on the license plate and you have an even number, you can only drive your car around on an even day, on a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Saturday. Just call them. If you don't, just cut it in half. We can do it, right? Because everybody's been just simple things, simple things like that. But the people have to sort of stand up for that, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing or a violent thing. But I think that if we don't change and save the planet for our younger people, and the younger people are standing up for themselves pretty good right now, at least here in America, and I just seen France, Germany, England, everywhere. I don't know how it is in Australia and New Zealand. Well, then who's the world being left to? You know, it's like, what's the sense? What's the sense? You know, if we're not going to sort of try to change things and make things a little bit better, you know.
For sure. Well put. You got a wonderful community of musicians around you on this album. Did you go into it with a wish list of specific people for specific roles?
You know, certain people I definitely wanted to do something with. I wanted to do something with Yorma, of course. That was you know, the top of my list because I'm you know, 17, 18, standing in the front row of the Fillmore watching Yorma play.
Yeah.
With those distinctive choice of notes that he uses. Nobody uses those choice of notes. So of course I want to do something with Yorma. I mean, with Mitch Ryder, it just was a no-brainer because I played on his record. And I had this Perfect Soul song for him. With Waddy, of course, who don't want to play with Waddy? That's like, it's Mr. No Filter. I mean, you're playing with the producer in the studio. Every time I run into a technical problem or a musician problem or an issue, I'd call Waddy. You know, it's like having a pit bull that's your best friend. So that, you know, and you know, and the cool thing is that I got to make friends with people that I didn't know. I didn't know Sam Cooke's daughter Carla that well. I'd heard of her, and one of the A&R men said, "Joe, you know, why don't you try it?" And I did, and we hit it off just great, you know. And I was able to really connect with her, and I just love her family and the history. And to see, well, Kev Mo's like my partner in crime. Yeah. You know, it's always, I love Kevin. It's always good to play with him. And Jesse Johnson, I'd seen play with the Times, and boy, I mean, it was like he takes a solo. It's like Look Out Below. You know, he's just wicked, man. You know, so I got to do that. You know, and I guess, you know, of course, being a guitar fan, you know, certain people I played with that I wanted to say, like, man, you know, it's like you got telepathy when you play with them. You don't even have to say what key. You don't have to when you play with them. And I have that with Albert Lee when we played some parties together and stuff. And I just started playing, and he knew exactly what to play. He'd start playing, and I knew exactly how to back him up. You know, a lot of people don't know that Albert Lee is one of the most talented guys in the world. He's known for guitar. He can play piano and sing like a bird.
Yes.
You know, I'm serious. Yeah, it's wicked. So I was glad to be able to have that, and to be able to play with Jelly Bean also, Johnson, who's a great drummer and great guitar player. Let's see, who else am I thinking about on this record? And also great people like Bruce Katz, who I'd done an acoustic record with here not too long ago, and all the musicians who were part of my band who were playing there. Lenny Bradford, great bass player, and Lenny played with Bo Diddley and Denny Lane he played with Denny Lane, and having great musicians like Juma Sultan, of course, the percussionist who played with Jimi Hendrix Woodstock band, you know, that band, and Juma also played with Richie Havens. Juma's a great musician. So, and of course, my friend Charlie Harper from the UK Subs. People say, "Well, Joe, you like punk music?" Hell yeah! I used to live in England in the '80s. I was on the Demon label with Stiff Little Fingers and Nick Lowe and Elvis and everybody. Elvis Costello, because it's Elvis's label. So yeah, I love it. So when I got a chance to, you know, have Charlie Harper sing 7 and 7 It Is with me, you know, the old love song, I mean, said, yeah, let's get Charlie on there, and he could even bring his harmonica, you know. So it was some of it just fell into place.
Yeah.
Like the thing with Waddy just fell into place.
Yeah.
But, you know, for the most part, you know, having people like Ray Walker, you know, one of the last living Jordanaires, to sing on Lonely Weekend was great, because I've known Ray about 15, 20 years, and it was just, you're being around living history when you're around Ray Walker. I mean, Ray could always tell me stories for hours. I could just listen to the stories of the Jordanaires singing behind Ricky Nelson and then behind Elvis Presley, and how they were discovered by Sister Rosetta Tharpe. It's just amazing, all the history. And that's another thing, to be able to hear all the history of everybody. I just never get tired of it because I'm a fan, big fan of all these people.
Hmm. And you have the legendary Dion there as well, and I believe you appear on his new album as well. How did you come in contact with him?
Well, when I moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, where I live now, I have a good friend, Jimmy Vivino. He's the musical director for a late night show we had here called the Conan O'Brien Show.
Yep.
And so Jimmy would put on these big shows, and he said, Joe, there's a couple guys, man, that'd like to meet you, and I sure you like. And then I said, who? And he said, well, John Sebastian. And we said, Sebastian. I said, hell yeah. And he said, Dion. I about fainted. And so we're on the show together, and I hit it off with both of those guys. And so Dion would always, I did a couple of shows, and he said, man, I got some songs for you. And so he sent me a couple of songs. One was Blues Comin On, and I said, well, and I like it because he told me the same thing that Keith did. Keith Richards gave me a song to do called that I recorded it, but it didn't make it on this album. A song he did with the Winos called "Make No Mistake." I recorded it with a great female singer. Did it pretty good, so I was doing that song, and with Dion, he sent me some songs, and so every time I would take the song Blues Comin On and I'd switch it around and I'd send it to Dion. He said, lose the piano. And I switch it around. And so I said, well, let me do it this way. So I did it, and I made it like two songs. The verses in the middle, and then a great guitar solo by Eric Gales. And then just do like church at the end, call and response, call and response. Just try to build it up, and everything going at once. And he liked that version. But then he recorded his version differently, which is cool. Which I think, a good song, like Heard It Through the Grapevine can be done by 2 and 3 people. Yeah. I mean, it was done by, Marvin Gaye and Gladys Knight and John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater. So it's a good song. So I was knocked out to play on his record because he sent me that song, and I laid some guitars down for it. And then we just took one guitar lick out, I defy anybody on the song I played on with him to tell who's singing. Is it him or is it Van Morrison? Because they sound so much alike.
Yeah.
It doesn't even sound like Van. Like, oh, domino, shout it over. It doesn't even. And Dion told me, he says, no, Joe, I had him not do the hollering. I told him just sing, because Van's real talented. Van can do them all. Yeah. He can holler the blues, and he's another, living legend, Van Morrison. So I was glad to be able to be part of that.
You really seem to be someone who really thrives on the process of collaborating with other musicians. This album isn't the first time you've recorded with other well-known musicians guesting. As a musician, what do you take out of the collaborative process that makes it such an enjoyable one for you? And I guess a learning process too.
Well, and I think it takes you out of your wheelhouse. I tell everybody, I would have loved to have heard Chuck Berry do a jump blues record with Big Joe Turner. Or I'd hear Chuck Berry do a ballads record with Nat King Cole, because Chuck Berry can do that stuff. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to have heard, Ray Charles and Solomon Burke. But it never happened. I would have loved to have heard, Elvis and Roy Orbison sing together, but it never. So when I got a little notoriety, I just see who I want. I want to play with that guy. I want to meet that guy. I want to do this and that. And for the most part, I'm doing pretty good. I've gotten a lot of my heroes on record. Yeah. I mean, really, a lot of them. I've been fortunate in that context, and the ones that aren't on record with me, I got a chance to play with them.
As we've mentioned already, it's a tough time to be releasing a new album, as you can't put any concrete plans in place in terms of touring to promote it. But do you have some kind of outline post-coronavirus? Would you look at relaunching the album at that point, or?
Well, what we're going to do here in the United States, I don't know what you guys are doing there, but they have movie drive-in.
Yeah.
And people are starting to use those here. So I'm doing one of them in July. I was going to do it in June, but we're going to wait till July, and a couple more, I think, coming after that. So a lot of people. One group is doing a tour of 45 drive-ins, one band, and so people are floating that one. And now professional sports teams are turning some of their parking lots into like open air concert things. So where people can, but no more than 500 cars or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, because people can't be close together. You got to be 10 or 12 feet away from each other. So we're going to see, what's going to happen. But as far as this record goes, just to be quite honest, as it is with all our lives, it's just going to have to wait.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they may re-release it, but to be quite honest, I don't think in my heart that not just the other issues I was talking about, expressing to you about, are gonna stay the same. They're gonna change. I think the music world's gonna change too.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a little bit of that spillover from that too. A little bit of more income equality. That was being worked on with the streaming issues anyway, with the music business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that now is the time that everybody is going to be taking a hard look at it's just fairness is fairness. I mean, the music business has just been riddled. It's been pirated, not in the good way.
Nah.
The musicians can barely, and now it's really hit home because musicians don't have a golden parachute. Most of us don't have. Royalties have dried up since the streaming thing has come. They make the money. The record companies make the money, but the musicians don't share in hardly any of the dividends. And so all of us, we're very happy to just say, oh, man, I got to hit the road, I got to hit the road, I got to hit the road. And now they're seeing now that nobody can be on the road, what do we have? Okay, I got a good question for Spotify, for iTunes, for Amazon, for all the record companies that get to streaming. Did any of them play note one on any of the music that they're making money off of? No. Did any of them offer to share any of the money with the musicians? No. So why should the musicians going back should go back to, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yep.
And so and they're sort of advocating. We're sending several lobbyists to Congress for that now. So I think the world's changing. It's changing in a number of ways, and I think the music business being a big part of our worlds, is going to have to change with the rest of the world.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, thanks so much for your time. Despite it all, congratulations on a wonderful new album, and it's certainly been spinning around in my CD player, and we'll continue to do so. And we hope next time we speak, it's in better times. And well, you don't need me to tell you how much you love down here in Australia, and we certainly hope that once all this is over, we see you back down here again.
For sure. Thank you so much, man. Cheers.
Good, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
All the best.